Cassie, thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to have you on. You are somebody that I've had the pleasure of getting to know over the past several years. We've been in different training spaces together, leadership programs, and you, above many other people, are somebody that really embodies what it means to be a servant leader, like taking it upon yourself to make a difference in the world and honestly doing it in a way that isn't about you. It isn't about likes, it isn't about followers, it isn't about how many people are subscribing to whatever list you might be trying to get them on. You show up for people in a really big way, and probably mentioned it already in the intro, but you're one of the only living two-time organ donors in the world. And I would love to hear more about that journey and why you chose to take that on.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today. It has been quite a journey over the last several years. It has taught me so much, and I'm excited to share it today. So, my journey with living organ donation started several years back. I was on social media. I had seen, one of those feel-good stories about so-and-so donating a kidney to somebody they knew. And immediately I thought, that's really cool, right? Like, oh, that might be something that, oh, that's really neat that science can do that. But it didn't feel personal. It didn't feel like, it was something that I necessarily identified with. And I kept seeing things. Of course, the algorithms on social media. Once you click on a couple of things, that's all you see. And I started to dive in a little bit, and I started to learn about the opportunities that were available to serve in this particular unique way. And within a few months, it went from that's really cool to, yeah, I want to do that. That's my bucket list thing. I want to do that. It percolated. It percolated, and a couple of years, I graduated from professional school, started practicing, and it was always in the back of my head that it was something I wanted to do. And not long after I had started a job, I got a big bonus. I got a bonus equivalent to a month's salary, and
Mhm.
immediately my brain tripped, and I said, oh, that's about the same amount of time I would need to be off if I donated a kidney. And once I locked onto the idea, that was it. I was like, okay, this is the time. This is why I'm here right now. Started researching, and I reached out to an acquaintance of mine that I hadn't talked to in about 3 years, who was in the nephrology field. And I said, hey, I want to donate a kidney. Do you know anything about this? And this is the absolutely crazy part. He piped up and said, yeah, I know a lot about it because I'm in testing to receive a kidney right now. He says, I'm in kidney failure.
Wow.
And it just blew me away. What are the odds?
Mhm.
Just out of the blue. And so we met up for dinner, which was this slightly awkward dinner of like, hey, I want to donate a kidney, and it'd be even cooler if I could give it to somebody I knew. And he's going, what's your blood type? Can you travel to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota? It was definitely a surreal time. And
Mhm.
over the next several months, we flew back and forth to Minnesota a couple of times, did a lot of testing, very thorough blood testing, imaging, psychological type testing. And about 6 months after that, on October 11th in 2017, I donated my left kidney to my friend John.
Wow.
And it was an absolutely incredible experience. We can dig into that a little bit more, but overall, it was a night or two in the hospital, stayed local
Mhm.
for about a week, came back home, enjoyed a couple of weeks off work, and I was back to my usual life. And the cool thing about it is that he was too. The recovery was a little bit different, but one of the most beautiful moments was, this is in October, that Christmas. His wife called me, and she said, John's towing the kids around in the sled in the backyard. He'd never been able to
Wow.
do that before.
That's
His kids were
amazing.
young, so they never knew him as sick. They grew up, and they just know that they've got a dad. They've got a dad that takes them to Disney World. They've got a dad that goes on, trips with them. They can do anything they want to do. So
Mhm.
that was that was the beautiful part about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and Cassie, I wanna acknowledge you for taking it upon yourself to give John and his family that gift. because of you, that they are able to enjoy their father in that way. And he's able to be the father that he wanted to be. I'm sure when he found out he was going to become a dad for the first time. And, I I definitely want to come back to your story, but I want to drill in on something here. I feel like in your story, what you described, you had this idea, you had this impact you wanted to make, and then you hit a little bit of the resistance. So you had the resistance of, oh, here's all these testings. I have to get psychologically evaluated, like all these things that aren't readily obvious, I don't think, to most people when they think of donating a kidney or another organ to somebody. What do you feel like supported you in getting over those obstacles and seeing it through to the end? Because I feel like people get these exciting, inspirational moments of, I'm going to have this impact, I want to make a difference, but then they more or less fold at the first sign of resistance.
That's a great question. I get to look back actually at my mother. Growing up, she was always a source of inspiration for me. She was always the person buying the extra little stretchy gloves at Dollar General so she could donate them in the little bin, there by the door to help the kids, or buying the school supplies for the kids that didn't have any school supplies. And growing up, I always was on the lookout for ways to help, and I get that just from growing up with my mom. Specifically, when I think of what motivated me to continue moving forward, it was the thought that with just, it's all relative. Yes, this is quote unquote some effort. This is some effort. I'm putting myself out. I'm flying a couple of times. I'm doing testings. I'm doing blood work appointments. But on the other half of that, what I can do for someone else with that
Mm-hmm.
effort is life-changing for them. If I can take a month of my life and recuperate from surgery, and I can give someone else 20 years with their children,
Yeah.
that's a no-brainer. That's a why not. Like, it's just the difference you can make with someone else, even if it's something small that you're doing for someone else, can be huge for another person.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really key is we don't ever actually know the extent of the ripples that we create. We do get to be the person that starts them, to go back to like Pocahontas, the Disney movie, you get to start the ripples, and we never get to see how far and how wide reaching they're going to be, but we get to be the person that starts that effect. And, to your point earlier, you created an entirely different relationship between father and children, and also a different outcome for the children as well, because you gave him that gift of life. And, folks listening to this, I acknowledge whatever you're up against, you are meant to have an impact with your time here on this earth. And you're going to have resistance. You're going to have to win people over to your idea. And I'd hope that you take Cassie's example today as something that it doesn't have to be a big showy thing on social media to have a profound impact. And so I got to ask, I know you mentioned that conversation with John's wife, but are you in contact with the family? Have you gotten any updates on the kids, how they're doing?
Yeah, yeah. I see them. They live in North Carolina, and I'm here in Ohio. So I see them about once a year. They come up for a Buckeyes game usually. And I saw this fall, and the kids they're growing up. They're looking great. The family's excited. They're doing all their family things. They're lifing.
Mhm.
So it's beautiful to see, to know that I had a little bit of a piece in what's all being created.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I want to shift gears slightly here because we talked about your kidney, but you also donated a piece of your liver. And that's something that I don't think most people have heard of. I think kidneys are something we hear about getting donated more frequently, but what was that experience like, and what propelled you to be a second time donor?
Once I had done the kidney, I equate it a little bit to like childbirth. There's a lot of excitement up into it. There's a lot of preparation. People are moving, plans are being made, people are getting ready, a ton of energy and excitement around it. And then in the middle of it, there's that moment of like, what did I do? Was this really a good idea? When you're in the thick of it. And then you're done and you're recovered and you look back and you kind of say, that was really cool. Yeah, I would do that again.
Mhm.
And you can't do it again. You only have two kidneys. You get to keep one for yourself. And in the social media circles I was becoming a bigger part of, I noticed over the years, some of the kidney donors were also becoming liver donors.
Mm.
It's that idea that, this was meaningful. It was a part of my life. I made a big difference for someone. How else can I make a difference for someone else? Fast forward 5 years, again, the idea kind of was there. It percolated a little bit. It wasn't an off the cuff type of a thing. And I found out that the Cleveland Clinic here in Ohio, just a couple hours away from me, was doing laparoscopic living liver donation. So traditional living liver donation used to require they just, cut you open in a big way. Very extensive recovery, very challenging, really tough on the body. And the Cleveland Clinic was one of 2 or 3 in the United States that were doing the laparoscopic. They were making just the little tiny portholes, one slightly smaller incision, and the recovery was much easier. And when I found out that it was there and it was so close and so accessible, that's what really made me say, you know what? Yeah, this is something that I want to do. And I reached out to them as a non-directed donor. So a non-directed living liver donor does not have a specific recipient in mind. They just
Mhm.
show up and say, hey, who needs this? Who needs this piece of me? Find me a good match. Find me somebody that needs this and is compatible. And the hospitals love that, of course.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
living liver donors can even create what they call chains, living donor chains. And they just recently had one at Ohio State, actually, that if you show up without a recipient in mind, you can kick off a chain where pairs that want to donate to each other but may not be a match can donate in a chain stepwise fashion. Like, donor A can donate to donor C's person, and donor C
Mhm.
can donate to donor D's person, and donor D can donate to donor E's person. And so you end up with you kick off something that's incredible, and you can do 10 or 12 people that are all donating to each other, and everybody gets the things that they need. So when I showed up as a non-directed donor, they were thrilled to death. And same thing, all the testing, all the blood work, all the workup, a little bit closer to home, which was nice, but very exhausting, very exhaustive testing. And they did find a recipient who needed the left half of my liver. And on November 1st of 2021, I went up to the Cleveland Clinic and donated that. And I didn't know the person at all. They gave me a card the day of the surgery that she had written, and they'd blacked out the name because you don't get
Mhm.
to know yet. Later, about a year later, they ask if you want to know, and if they consent to releasing their information and you consent to releasing information, they'll crisscross you and you guys can meet up. But for the time, I didn't know. So donated that left half of my liver, was in the hospital, got out, came back, had some time off work, healed up well. And a year later, I received an email after we had both released our information from a lady named Danielle that lived in the Cleveland area. And Danielle had 3 children, and she's just a little bit older than I am. And she was describing how she was going to get to see her oldest child graduate from high school very
Yes.
soon. And she was going to get to be there
Mhm.
because of her transplant surgery.
Yeah.
So it was yeah, that's the second half. And I'm also on the bone marrow registry, which many people are nationwide. Haven't gotten called for that one. You have to just sit tight and wait on that one. They let you know if they need you. But it's been an incredible journey. One of the things I think I've learned the most on it is you never know what somebody's going through. I've come
Yeah.
across a lot of people from all walks of life during that transplant journey, and transplant families and recipients and donors, and you have all those talks in the coffee shops and while you're waiting for the appointments, and I met several people that I still communicate with online from all over the country, and it really brings home the fact that people are going through things that you don't know about, and it it makes me feel grateful for my health, for the way that I'm able to support, and it also gives me a lot of grace and patience for others.
Hmm.
It's that when you're in traffic and the person's not moving fast enough, it's the thought that, hey, maybe something's going on that I don't know about.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a thought.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this, and that's a very beautiful point. Absolutely. Everybody is fighting some type of battle that we know nothing about, and we probably never will know anything about. And I would love to hear more about why it is that people like you that are doing the actual work to be an angel of difference for others, you're actually in a lot of ways choosing to take on a struggle, take on pain, take on, I don't want to call it suffering because I know that you're being very filled by the difference that you're making, but you are going through the actual act of having the organ taken out, you're having the recovery, you're doing the post-op appointments, you're doing all those things all for somebody that you don't know. How can people shift into that type of mindset for them, for not only for themselves but for the world?
People can look around them. The opportunity to do good is absolutely everywhere. Whether it's grabbing a couple of extra cans at the grocery store to donate to the food bank, or whether it's buying the stretchy gloves at the dollar store to donate for the kids or the school
Mhm.
supplies, or whether it's shoveling your neighbor's walk when it's snowy, or offering, a ride to someone without transportation. You just have to open your eyes and look. I think it's very easy to stay in your own lane, especially in today's society. There's a lot of focus on me, my development, my finances, what am I doing with my relationships, it's my health and fitness. And it doesn't take much to focus out and to look at what's around you and to get real on the opportunities that exist, because they're out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And how would you coach somebody on getting started looking for ways to make a difference in the world beyond themselves and their
Oh,
family?
that's great. The incredible thing about social media and the internet is it has made it very easy to find out what's going on outside of yourself. There are a lot of great sources. There's like volunteermatch.org that's out there. There are, you can just Google, how can I help my community? And you're going to be able to connect to many, many things. Obviously, some faith-based organizations often have community service efforts. Community organizations, even your city government, a lot of times will have cleanup days around the city or things like that. It's out there, and it doesn't take much to reach out and find those resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And, folks, it doesn't have to be organ donation. I think to Cassie's point, this is her journey. This is how she has felt called to make a difference in the world. And, fact of the matter is, not all of us are viable donor candidates, and that's okay. That doesn't make you any less of a person. But if you are looking for some type of higher calling, if you are honestly just wanting to make a difference, there are numerous ways out there, and it doesn't have to look any type of way. But I encourage you to do it with the people that you're helping in mind. It does definitely should not be for social media, shouldn't be for likes or followers or, I think my least favorite thing I see is when people go and feed the homeless and the entire thing is filmed and on Instagram in an hour. And, who is that actually for at the end of the day? And so definitely reach out to, or definitely take the time to find opportunities to get involved. Cassie, I want to ask you this because I know it's not the type of thing you would bring up yourself, but I also think it's a very compelling thing about you and who you are. You built your own house with your own hands. And I would have to think that your dedication to making a difference for others and taking on something as big as building a home with your own two hands had to go hand in hand. Is there any insight into how one begot the other or vice versa?
I think, and you say you built it with your own two hands. I had about 50 hands helping, and these
Okay.
are hands that are often involved with me in serving others and serving our communities. And one of the things I think is you get what you give. And so
Mm,
what I saw in, my house building process, it was a kit. It was a kit home. It showed up on a semi truck. They dumped it in the yard, and a bunch of us looked at it and went, "Oh, that's a lot of pieces." And over the next year, nights, weekends, holidays, um, it was not just me. It was a whole community of people that supported me in putting it together and making it all happen. And what I noticed was when I show up for others in some way, when I support them, when I invest and pour into them, it's reciprocity. They came
mhm.
right back. They wanted to be a part of what I was up to. They wanted to be a part of supporting me. And
Yeah.
that's just one of the most beautiful things is when we give to others, we get from others. We get in relationship, we get in physical support, we get in so many different ways. And that's what made the house possible.
Yeah.
I think from a perspective of, what made me think I could do this in the beginning was a little bit of the same possibility that I saw when I thought, well, why not me with the organ donation? It was an
Yeah.
immediate thought of like, yeah, I could do this. I don't know much about it, but I can learn about it. I don't know what it's going to entail, but I can figure it out. And so that attitude of I can dive into anything that comes my way and create anything I want to is something that I've been working on for several years now through some personal development things and some emotional intelligence training, and it served me well, and it's been a source of inspiration and fun and accomplishment.
Mhm.
And I am enjoying the house. It's complete. I've been hosting events and parties, and I've just got a lot of space for people, and I really enjoy being in community with those who have helped me build and those who have come afterwards. Just to use the house as a place to give back to others. So if they're
Yeah.
coming into town for something or another, they've got a wonderful, hospitable place to stay. I can get to know new people through that, and it's been a blessing being able to build it and then being able to use it on the other end.
Absolutely. You mentioned something briefly, and I want to drill down on it. You talked about, believing in yourself, believing, why not me? Why not become the donor, the giver of life? Why not be the person who builds their own house? We talk a lot about confidence on this show. Like, it's actually a main pillar of what this show is about. And we talk a lot about we build self-confidence by basically keeping our promises, our commitments to ourselves, and allowing it to land that we're doing something for ourselves at the same time and going beyond our comfort zone. Would you say that for you personally, you built your self-confidence over time, or was this something that you've always had?
Definitely a skill. Definitely something that I've been working on for a number of years. Had a lot of support along the way. I've had some very specific trainings that supported it. And what I have found is confidence for me comes from self-trust. And self-trust it comes from integrity and self-compassion. When I set myself forward to do the things that I said I'm going to do, I prove to myself that I'm worthwhile and I can trust myself to do the things I said I was going to do. And that builds confidence for me. That builds that rock solid foundation from which I can launch and say, yeah, I can do this. Even if I don't know how, I know that I can.
So you mentioned self-compassion, and I feel like that's something that's slept on as what goes into building our confidence. It's so often we want to be doing the big thing, but we don't meet ourselves where we're at. We don't have a kind inner dialogue. Doesn't mean we're overly flowery hearts and roses about whatever we're creating, with whatever the circumstances are, but it's at least not beating ourselves up. What works for you? What works with some of the people that you work with in terms of at least developing that inner dialogue so that it's advantageous and not holding us back from what we want to create.
Yeah. One of my tricks is I try to take a step back out of that and ask, how would I be feeling about, or how would I be treating someone that I loved? You know,
Mm,
it's very easy to get into that self beat up mode of, oh, I never should have done that. And that was such a bad decision. And I'm so stupid. And, it's very easy to go there. And so I stop myself and I say, okay, if someone I loved were sitting next to me and they told me this thing that just happened, would I say that to them? Well, no, I would never say that to them, not in 100 years. What would I say? You did the best you could. You made the best
mhm,
decision you could with the information you had. You
mhm.
know, it's going to be okay. Like, this isn't the end of the world. It feels really big right now, but it's going to be okay. And when I can step into that for myself, it creates a lot of resilience. And believe me, building that house, oh, I made so many mistakes, things that weren't even on my radar. Oh my gosh. I learned a lot. And sometimes, somebody said clarity is expensive. And it is, because when you make some mistakes with building, sometimes they're very big mistakes. And being able to, I actually had a mantra, and it was I trust myself. I'm making the best decisions I can with the information I have, given the time allowed. And even if it doesn't work out, it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
And I would use that over and over again to remind myself that I was doing the best that I could. And I get to have grace and compassion, because if there's something I don't know, or something that I later in hindsight think, oh, well, that wasn't the best thing to do, it's gonna be okay. And I'm human, and I get to be
Mhm.
human, and I get to have grace for myself. And when I look at myself that way, it supports me in building my confidence, or at least in not tearing it down. And I try to look at others that way too. I try to look around me when things happen at work, and, if somebody makes an error or something, I try to say, okay, this person's human. They were doing the best they could. How can we support them in, okay, we get to choose something different next time, but how we can support them in not getting bogged down in that, not getting in that shame spiral, not getting in that mode where you just get frozen up, and then the next time you're frozen, you don't want to make a decision, because what if it's the wrong one?
Yeah.
It's stepping out of that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times it's just about keeping the momentum going. And I think you made a great point about making the best possible decision with the information that you have. And it doesn't mean getting the exact most perfect possible outcome with the exact most perfect decision. And that's okay, because we're human and there's going to be mistakes. I want to acknowledge the beautiful house that you built. And you said that you made some mistakes. I bet it was not fun in both the Ohio summer heat and also the Ohio winter, keeping going on a project like this day after day after day. But what do you feel like was the one or two biggest lessons you learned that you can carry forward from the rest of your life?
Ah, that was probably the biggest one of, even if I make mistakes, even if they're big mistakes, even if I feel like at the moment, oh my gosh, I'm never going to recover from this, you do. I do. Life will go on. It's going to be okay. When I put half the flooring in wrong, and I had to rip it up and put it in facing the other
Oh
direction.
no.
That one stung. And it's okay. That's the biggest thing of it. I think the other thing is the gratitude for those around me. I was very clear that people were taking their own time to come and support me in this, because I had a vision and they wanted to be a part of it.
Mm,
And I never wanted to take that for granted, and I never forgot that. And so it was always a matter of realizing that nobody owes you anything in life, but many people want to give things to you in life. And I think being a receiver of that was important. That was a big lesson. I tend to be, and I love to be, the helper, the one providing, the one doing the things. And to be on the other side of that, to be on the receiving side, especially on things that I didn't know about. I didn't know how to install a window. And to have a friend that knows how to install windows come over and say, hey, I'm going to do this one. I'm going to show you how to do it. We're going to do the next one together. To be able to be the recipient of that, it's not just knowledge, it's love and care. To be the recipient of someone that's willing to give of themselves to me, and to
Hmm.
be humble enough to accept that, and not to be wound up that now I owe them in some way.
Yeah.
That's been a wonderful lesson in receiving, and that people love to give.
So, practically speaking, because so many people that listen to this show or even just in the world operate from a place of focusing out, giving, 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 giving to others, but are pretty bad at receiving. I mean, I'm actually somebody that typically falls into that category. How would you coach people into dropping into that place of receiving and being able to actually accept that people are wanting to pour into them, wanting to support them in their goals, something like as big as a house?
Yeah, it's a role reversal. When you think about giving, you think about how it makes you feel. Giving makes many people feel, warm and fuzzy, and they want to give. They want to be there in that space. They feel purpose filled, and they feel like they're doing something meaningful, and they enjoy it. And so if by receiving you can induce that in someone else, you can provide that opportunity for them to be in that space and experience those feelings and all those giving warm fuzzies, then you're supporting them as well. It also is important to think about receiving is not only it requires a humbleness. It requires a realization that none of us have everything. None of us have it all together. None of us are on top of the world all the time. And so, it's easy to talk about it in the form of a house or in somebody's supporting us and doing something logistical. And I think it's important to realize that receiving can be emotional support. Receiving
Yeah.
can be, I'm just at the end of my rope and I'm having a rough day and I don't know what to do. And that doesn't mean that we're broken or we're wrong or we're not good people or we don't have our lives together. It just means that sometimes everybody could use a little bit of support
Yeah.
and that it's okay because we're human.
I'm curious if besides the physical recovery that goes into, organ donation, were there any subtle ways, any ways that you had to lean into the support of others that maybe you hadn't thought of? And were any of them particularly challenging for you?
Yeah, I mean, there is the logistical, you have a caregiver, that person stays with you for a couple of weeks. Uh I think though there came a time for me of some frustration of, I don't post-op. I don't feel good. I want to feel good. I'm sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And I'm irritable. I'm sad. I want to be normal and I'm not normal yet. And my mom, she was my caregiver. She was just wonderful. And receiving support from people that are like, I get it. And I get that you want to feel good right now and you will, and it's okay. And it's okay to be in this space and to feel these feelings. That was the challenging part because it felt wrong somehow. Like I shouldn't feel like this. There's actually a little bit of a letdown sometimes after you donate an organ, and it's medical and it's psychological, but it's like all the excitement that's ramping up, and then the thing is over, and then it's kind of like, oh, and sometimes there's a feeling of what now? What do I do now? And at the same time, you don't feel well physically, and so you're working on that, and just being heard and seen through that, and being reassured that this is not forever is an important thing. And that was probably my most challenging thing because I was in go 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 mode, and put the brakes on a full stop when you do something like this.
Yeah. So clearly you're somebody that is going, is doing, is achieving, but is also doing it in a very focused out way. What does rest and recovery look like for you typically?
Ah, Rest and recovery, that's definitely a work in progress. I've gotten better at it over the last year, especially. I've been on a journey of deliberate self-care, and so that's been supportive for me. Uh, for me, typically it is just downtime, quiet time, can be with friends. Love to read, love to kayak seasonally. That's usually with friends, and just be in the space of not focusing on anything except for checking in with myself on how I'm feeling. What do I want to do day to day? I love to putter. I love to be here at the house and just, work on this little thing and work on that little thing, but nothing that I have to do. Everything that I just want to do, everything that I feel like doing at any given moment. And that's what really recharges me.
I love that. I love that. And just because you are somebody that is playing a really big game with their life and giving so much to so many people, what's next for you?
Ah, that is a question. Uh, there is something next because I never wanted to, I've met people that do the organ donation thing, and that is it. That is their identity. That is their whole life. And 20 years, there's still that time I did this, that time I did this, that time I did this.
Ooh, yeah.
And that always never sat well with me. I always thought, yeah, this is something amazing that I've been a part of, and it was an incredible experience. And this is not the highlight of my life. Like, what else can I create? What else do I want to be up to? The newest thing I'm doing here in the immediate future is I am volunteer captaining a cycle for next level trainings. It's an emotional intelligence leadership development program. Throughout the podcast, I've talked a little bit about, how I've gained confidence and some skills in this area, and that training has been a massive part of that. And so I'm blessed to give back in this particular way, and that's probably the next 4 or 5 months for me. And after that, I don't know. Sometimes life feels like a series of milestones. You go to college, you go to professional school, you get married or you have kids, or all the things that people do to check the boxes. And I'm at a point where I've checked a lot of those boxes. I've done a lot of the things, and so there is a big question of what's next for me, and how can I take my vision of making a positive difference in the world, and where can I go with it next?
Yeah. Well, whatever that next chapter is, I know you're going to crush it. I want to acknowledge you, Cassie, for being somebody that not only talks the talk, but walks the talk. There are so many people that read self help books, listen to podcasts, take a course, do a program, and then don't actually do anything with it. But just in getting to know you over the last several years and watching you grow and evolve, it's really magical how much impact you make because you say so. And so I want to make sure to leave you with that today. And I want to make sure the folks listening to this know how to get in contact with you, continue the conversation offline. Where are the best ways for them to follow up?
Sure. Probably the best way for me is via email. It's my last name, Kurtz, KURTZ.214 @gmail.com. And you can always get a hold of me through Stu as well.
Yep, absolutely. We will make sure Cassie's contact info is made available in the show notes wherever you are catching this episode. And folks, y'all can hit me up as well. I'll connect you. Cassie's great people, and that's why I had to have her on today. Cassie, I want to ask you this as we head out. What are you acknowledging yourself for today?
Ooh, I am acknowledging myself for being on this podcast and sharing my story. These events in my life happened minimum 2 or 3 years ago. The kidney donation was 7 years ago now, and for a long time, again, it was something quiet. It was something I had done, but I just didn't feel the need to share with anyone. And I started thinking recently about how can I make a difference with this thing that I've already done, and I can make a difference with others by sharing it. To bring forth the idea maybe someone's not familiar with, that hey, you can donate parts of your body to other people and be completely healthy and wonderful afterwards. And also with some of the other topics we've delved into about, compassion and confidence and resilience and support. And, I can make a difference for others right now, those of you who are listening to this podcast. So I'm acknowledging myself for getting out of my comfort zone and being here with you fine people today.
Cassie, thank you so much for being here today. And folks, please, if you got any value from today's conversation, share this out with at least one other individual. Cost of admission here is always free. So please do your part in getting our guests, getting our messages out to the world. Doesn't cost you anything except a couple of taps on your phone or click of a mouse. So we will catch you next time with another amazing guest or message. We will see you then.